Hi there. Since the Othello board requires working with two-dimensional arrays, and two-dimensional arrays are actually a pretty important topic, I wrote a little program here that I'm going to explain that deals with counting items in a two-dimensional array and looking for patterns in two-dimensional arrays, which in Othello you need to do both of those. You need to look for a capture anchor tile so that the game knows how many and where to flip tiles when one of the player plays. So I wrote this little program, and first of all, let's look at what the variables are. I just have a two-dimensional string variable called grid. I think in Othello, yours is called game board. And my grid, I'm going to put either blue or yellow, and I think you have either white or black, so yours will be a little bit similar. So I wrote a few methods, and down in the main method where execution of the program begins, the first thing it does is create a new two-dimensional array. So up here we just declared the variable grid. We actually need to instantiate it before we can assign values to it down here in the main method. So I first of all came up with a random number of rows that's going to be somewhere between 5 and 9. And then a random number of columns that's also going to be between 5 and 9. And I assigned those to two local variables I created called number of rows and number of columns. Then I made the grid with that number of rows and that number of columns. So each time my program runs, it's going to create a new grid or two-dimensional array with a random number of rows and columns somewhere between 5 and 9 for each of them. Okay, so after I made my array, I wanted to populate the array with either randomly populate it with either blue or yellow values. So I did the classic nested for loop, which is typically what you almost always do when you're iterating through each position of a two-dimensional array. All right, and I made I typically is used for rows, and J is typically used for columns. So what are my bounds in my for loop? Well, if I'm for the outer loop, I'm going to go row by row. So the way I access how many rows the two-dimensional array is I say grid.length. Now, if grid was a one-dimensional array, grid.length would be how many items are in that array. Essentially, with a two-dimensional array, I have an array of arrays. So each row is an array. So I consider .length to be how many arrays there are in row arrays there are in grid. So that's how the bound you almost always use when you're going through two-dimensional array row by row. You always say the name of the array .length. And then, of course, I increase my counter variable. Then, inside, I'm going to go through each element in a row one by one, moving across. And this is typically what you do when you're making it through an array. The classic way, two-dimensional array, is to go row by row, and then inside each row, you're going to go across. So I'm going to say in j equals 0, J, now what's the bounds? The bound is going to be how long each array is that goes across. Well, since I'm going to have a square rectangular array, what I put is grid bracket 0 .length. So grid bracket 0 is one of the arrays in my two-dimensional array. It's one row. In fact, it's row 0. So I say grid bracket 0 .length. That if you have an array that has at least one row, you will have row 0, so you say the name of the array bracket 0 .length, and then j++. So j is almost always used when you're going across each row. Okay, so what am I going to do as I go through each element in my two-dimensional array? I'm going to randomly assign blue or yellow. So you'll notice here I say if int math.random times 2 equals 0. So that math.random times 2 int is going to generate a random number between 0 and 1. Right? It's going to start at 0. You're going to have two of them, so 0 and 1. So I say if it's 0, then put a blue in there. And then just so we can see what's going on behind the scenes, I printed out B every time it puts a blue. Then otherwise, if it's not 0, it must be 1, you're going to put a yellow in quotation marks in that element in the array. So I think yours are black and white, and you'll be like game board ij equals, black. And then it's going to print the yellow. And then after each row, it's going to do, I'm going to do system out.print the escape sequence \n. So I'll have a new line in my output, and then it'll print out what's in the next row as it makes them. So when I run this, you'll see that it's generating a new rectangular array each time with either, now here it says B, but it's really blue in the actual array. All right. Okay, so that's creating a random two-dimensional array with either blue or yellow in each element. All right, so now let's look at the methods. Okay, well the common things you do with a two-dimensional array is to count how many items of a certain kind are elements stored in elements in the array. So I wrote a method that's called number of blues or yellows in column, and a method called number of blues or yellows total. Okay, so you'll notice in your Othello game, whoever wins is whoever has the most of black or white. So this method is actually in your Othello, should be in the Othello game. I don't think you have to write it. It will be there. So I do the classic thing where I make a count variable, and then I have a for loop, a nested for loop, that's going to go through each element in the array. If it finds that whatever is in there is equal to some color, then it's going to add 1 to count, and then it's going to return count. So this is similar to a lot of the coding problems with one-dimensional arrays. The same type of thing. Okay, now notice that I supply I have a parameter that's called color, and it's a string variable. So when we call the method down in the main method for the random array that we make, we're going to have to supply a value for color. So now the reason I didn't do equals equals and I did dot equals is that in Java, to compare string values, you have to use dot equals. You can't use equals equals like you can in C#. So just remember that in Java, when you're comparing string values, you have to say dot equals and then the other string. I think I've gone over that before, but just as a reminder. All right, so then finally it's going to return the count variable. All right, and that's going to tell me how many string values of color are in my two-dimensional array. All right, now I have one called number of blues or yellows in column. So in this one, when I call it, I'm not only going to supply a string value for color, I'm also going to supply an int value for column num. So, but it's still going to work pretty much the same way, very similar, except instead of counting every single element, going through every single element, I only need to go through the elements in a single column. So I only need one for loop as a result. So I need to go row by row in a specific column and check to see what value is in there. So I have a for loop that's going to go from 0 to grid length, because remember, grid length for a two-dimensional array, the dot length means how many rows you have. All right, and then I have a single if statement that says if grid bracket I column num. Now column num never changes, right? And that value will be supplied to the method when I call the method. So this is never going to change. I is just going to go row by row, and if then I have dot equals color count plus plus return count in the end. So that's going to count the number of string values of a certain string in a specific column in a two-dimensional array. All right, so now let me go down in my two-dimensional array called grid. All right, so now let me go down and let's run the program, and you'll notice down in the main method, so down in the main method is where I create my random array, two-dimensional array with blue and yellow inside. All right, now I'm going to come up with a random row and a random column in my array. So I say int test row equals int math.random times number of rows. So as you may recall, number of rows is how many rows are going to be in my array, and how many columns, test column, I'm going to do the same thing for number of columns. So if I have 8 rows, this statement is going to generate a random value between 0 and 7, right? Because I'm going to have 8 values starting with 0 because I didn't add anything here on the end. Then I did the random test column. Okay, now down here, look at these. In fact, let me move this to afterwards. So after it. Okay, I say system.out.println column plus test column has, now I'm going to call my number of blues or yellows in column method with blue as the argument for the string parameter color, and test column for the column number that I want to check. So I called that with blue, so I say plus blues and plus number of blues or yellows in column yellow test column plus yellows. And I did the same thing for the total. So I called the number of blues or yellows total for blue and number of blues or yellows total for yellows. All right, and if you run your program, I think it works. It says, okay, column 0 has 2 blues and 4 yellows. Does it? Let's look. Y, B, B. Correct. Okay, the grid has a total of 19 blues and 23 yellows. I'm not going to go through and count. I'm pretty sure it's correct. If you add 19 and 23 together, you get 42 in my row. My two-dimensional array has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 rows and 7 columns. 6 times 7 is 42. All right, so that's those are some relatively common and simple methods. Now, checking for a pattern. Okay, so you have to do that in the nearest capture anchor. It's a little bit trickier, a little bit more demanding, but let's look at a pattern that I'm going to check for. Okay, so my next method is going to check to see if you supply it an element, the coordinates of an element, and it's going to check to see if from that element going in the northeast direction you have blue, yellow, blue, and then neither blue nor yellow. So it could be like maybe blank or some other random color. So let me just put some other colors in here. Or let me put like no color at all, in which case the element would store the value null. Because if an element of an array of strings contains nothing, it will actually contain the keyword null will be its assigned value. All right. So what my new method is going to do is going to say, okay, starting from here, when I check for blue, yellow, what are the coordinates of where the pattern stops? Okay, or if the pattern continues on till it hits the edge of the array, I'm going to what are the coordinates? Well, I'm just going to say the coordinates are going to be -9, -9, just to indicate that the pattern continued until you went off the grid. So like here, if I gave this row and this column to my array, which would be 0, 1, 2, 3, row 3, column 3, and I ran my array, it should return -9, -9, because if you go to the northeast, you're going to see blue, yellow, blue. The pattern just continued. It hit the edge of the screen. You're going to get -9, -9. On the other hand, if I supplied the coordinates for 7, 3, Well, let's look. Does it follow the blue-yellow pattern? No, the first one is yellow. So it should return 6, 4, because that's the first element that does not match the pattern. All right, if I did, let's see, let me give you one here. Let's say I've supplied 7, 1. This element does not make the pattern at all, so I would return 6, 2. If I did, let's see, row 3, column 0, it should return row 0, column 3, because if you look and go to the northeast, blue, yellow, oh, it should be blue, it's a yellow, that makes the pattern fail, and the method should return 0, 3. All right, so let's look at how I wrote this method. Okay, so it is called blue-yellow pattern ends here. All right, and now what does it return? It returns a one-dimensional array, and that one-dimensional array is going to have 2 values. The first value is going to be the row of the element where the pattern failed, and the second value is going to be the column of the element where the blue-yellow pattern failed. All right, and it's going to return -9, -9 if the pattern never fails and it just continued until you hit the edge of the grid. Okay, so what did I do? I made a count variable and set it equal to 1. And the first thing I did is, so row and column get supplied when you call the method. That is where you're starting to see if the pattern exists. So the first thing I'm going to do is say I'm heading to the northeast, so row is going to be decreasing and column is going to be increasing as I go to the northeast. I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to make a while loop. And I'm going to say, okay, as long as I haven't hit the edge of the graph. So how do I specify that? I say, okay, while row is greater than or equal to 0 and column is less than or equal to grid 0.length minus 1. So grid 0.length minus 1 would be the column coordinate of the last element, the last column in my grid. So as long as that is true, I'm still on the grid, it's going to check to see if count, which I'm going to increment each time, is even or odd. So if it's odd, okay, so that would be the first time the loop executes, as long as I haven't hit the edge of the grid. If it's odd, it's going to check to see if it's blue. So if that element is not blue, then that element would be the one that broke the pattern, and I just want to return an array with the new row and column values. So the way I can make an array and return it and specify values for it all in a single statement would be return new int brackets row column. Now the alternative way would be to say, okay, int, x equals new int, 2, and then x bracket 0 equals row, and x bracket 1 equals column, and then I would say return x. But I can do it all in a single statement by saying return new int, a new array that has row and column, so it has 2 values. Whatever row and column are, that's where it failed. And then I say, okay, if the count is even, meaning when count is 2, 4, 6, and 8, that's when I should be encountering yellows. If I don't encounter a yellow, then I'm going to return that element where I didn't encounter the yellow. Okay, so my method will end immediately. Otherwise, as long as I'm making that pattern, I'm going to increase count, decrease the row, and increase the column. So the next time through, it's going to check the next element going in the northeast direction. Then finally, if it makes it all the way, this all continues until it ends, well, that means without having returned a value, that means the pattern has continued until it hit the edge of the graph, or the edge of the grid going in the northeast direction. And in that case, I return a int array that has -9 and -9 to indicate that the pattern continued on. So now down in the main method, I actually called this for the random array that I created. Okay, and for the random row, the element in the random row and the random column. So I called it twice. I called it with the test row and the test column. And let's see. Yes. Okay, so it's going to return right the coordinates where the pattern failed. So let's look and run it. So in this one, column 5, row 5, column 2 is my random element. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 0, 1, 2. Okay, so that would be this one right here. From there, it's going to check to see if I have a BYBYB pattern. Well, I have a B, so that's good. But then I have a B, so that means the pattern failed right here, which is 0, 1, 2, 3, row 3, column 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's see, did I? Oh, no, I'm sorry. It's row 3, 5. 0, 1, 2, 3, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, it should be here, not here. I did 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it's going to start here, a B, a Y, a B. Let's see, am I doing this right? 0, 1, 2, 3, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Let's see. 0, 1, 2, 3, 0, 1, 2, 5. Y, B, Y. Something must be wrong with my method. It was working earlier. Let's see why it isn't now. 6, 1, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1. It's going to return 5, 2. Correct, because it should, this breaks the pattern right there. It should be BYB. All right, let's keep running it to see if I can figure out where it's wrong. So row 1, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yes, it's going to return 0, 7, right? Because this should be a B, it's a Y. Here, I have row 3, 4, 0, 1, 2, 3, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. There's a B, and then I hit the edge of the graph. So it returns -9, -9. Correct. Let's run it again. 8, 3, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 0, 1, 2, 3. B, Y, should be a B. It's a Y. So yes, it returns row 6, 5, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And this was 8, 3. So it was there. B, Y. All right, I may have to look at my method and figure out what is askew, because it was working earlier. I wonder if I accidentally changed something. 1, 2, 0, 1, and then I get 1, 2. Yeah, so that's right, because it should be a B. All right, I'm going to go look at my method and see if I can figure out what's wrong with it. Actually, no, I'm going to make the screencast because I'm running out of time and your class is about to begin. All right, so that's kind of an example of scanning through a two-dimensional array for elements of in a specific pattern and counting the elements, just like you need to do in Othello. Maybe I'll make another, I'll add to this screencast when I figure out what's wrong, why it didn't seem to be working. But in the meantime, hope that helped. And I think the good news is I'm returning right after Thanksgiving instead of in mid-December. I'm returning the Monday right after Thanksgiving. So you only really have 2 more weeks of my absence. All right.